Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
No loop. Today, no bugle playing in the background like last week. It's good to see you here. I wondered when I was out walking the dog this morning and was frozen to the bone how many would show up today. So thank you for coming. This is the second. I'm Richard Young, by the way. I would ordinarily be up here just to introduce speakers, read a passage of scripture, and offer a prayer. Today I'll be up here more. I'll explain why in a moment. This was to be, and really still is, the second week on iRISE. But there's a little twist, and I'll say something about that a little later. iRISE stands for Interfaith-RISE, and the full name is a reminder that the challenges we face regarding immigration, for example, are just too great to be addressed by a single faith tradition. To get traction on these issues, people of faith, people of all faiths, and of course even including people of no particular faith, have to join together. And so when that happens in an interfaith kind of context, the sacred texts of each tradition are often invoked. And I'm going to do that this morning from the Torah, the Quran, and the Gospel. From the Torah, the book of Exodus, chapter 22. You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien, for you were aliens in Egypt. You shall not abuse any widow or orphan. If you do abuse them when they cry out to me for justice, I will surely heed their cry. And now from the Quran, this is the opener, the first surah, first portion of the Quran. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds, the compassionate, the merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee we worship, and from thee we seek help. Guide us upon the straight path, the path of those whom thou hast blessed, not of those who incur wrath, nor of those who go astray. And now the gospel. You will recognize this as the preamble to the Good Samaritan. A lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus said to him, what's written in the law? The lawyer answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said to him, you've given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. Now, the prayer for today is the same as the prayer I offered last week. It's splicing together a few lines from the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer on social justice, and 2 lines that I have sandwiched in between from a poem by a young black poet, Amanda Gorman. Would you please join me in prayer? Almighty God, who created us in your own image, may we not be afraid of those without papers, but rather of those without conscience. Grant us grace fearlessly to contend with evil and to make no peace with oppression. In the name of Jesus, amen. So at this point, I would ordinarily introduce our speakers. You may look around and wonder where they are. Well, neither one was able to come today because of COVID. And the Grim Reaper has been busy in New Brunswick at the Highland Park Church staff meeting, apparently, this week where it went around. And so that's a disappointment for sure. It would have been Fida Ayubi, whose presence would have been extraordinarily helpful to us because she's the director of volunteer services for IRISE, which is a pretty large faith-based organization based at the Highland Park Reformed Church in New Brunswick. And Victor Pelaez O'Toole, who is the director of the newest branch of IRISE. It has several branches statewide, and Victor Pelaez O'Toole is the director at Trenton, where IRISE nests in the Westminster Presbyterian Church. Some of you know Pastor Karen Hernandez, that's her church. And I've been on site several times getting acquainted with what they do, but I'm not going to try to speak for IRISE and tell you what I have learned about it, except to say that a really wide range of immigrant services are available there, from ESL, English as a second language, to helping people draft, write, submit applications for asylum and work permits. And that doesn't really cover it all. There's a lot more that they do. And the communities that they serve are diverse. Haitians, Venezuelans, Cubans, Afghans, and the list goes on and on. And as some of you may know who follow these things, this last week was a week with some very critical dates for people whose temporary protected statuses would have been forfeited, terminated, were it not for a federal judge somewhere in some circuit, I forget where now, who has decided against the administration and temporarily suspended that order to terminate those protected statuses. What that really means, of course, is still rather uncertain. Those are some of the things that are done by IRISE in Trenton. And I hope someday that we can have Fida and Victor come in person to talk about what they're doing. But we're running out of Sundays before new programs begin in adult education. And so I'm not exactly sure when that will occur. I'm also pondering the possibility of doing something of an evening sometime, perhaps with the Restorative Justice Group under its auspices. We'll see. I don't want to lose this opportunity. Last week started a certain kind of momentum that I'm sorry to see slow down. But anyway, that's the situation, and I have a backup plan. I don't really know why we ever try to do anything major in January, February. We heard in the 8:30 service, if you were there, about animals that hibernate. The kids were really up on hibernation. They knew all about it. There were three kinds of animals, frogs, bears, and snakes, and turtles. And what do they all have in common? And somebody or all of them immediately said, they hibernate. And I would have had to think about it, but they knew right away. A little girl said, I learned all about that in school. So today I would like to brainstorm a thought experiment. I'll tell you what that is. It will not be brainstorming about anything new. It'll be brainstorming together about last week. But I don't know how many of you were here last week or may have listened online. How many were here, by the way? Would you raise your hands? Okay, about half. And for others who weren't here, if you want to go back, if today is of interest, online you can hear the presentation by a young woman who's the newest staff member of HomeFront, Bella Gerstmann, who has pioneered a project for separated immigrant families. And when I first met Bella back in early October, I think she had at that time around 30 separated immigrant families on her caseload. Now she has 90, and her project was limited to only 2 counties in New Jersey at the time. Now it's expanding, and she introduced us to her work, and it goes under the acronym CAN, which is rather nice, isn't it? Things we can do. It is the formal title is in Spanish, and my Spanish is so poor I'm not going to try to replicate it. But the acronym is CAN, and she had a number of slides that she used to highlight the important points of her talk, and those are available. Again, if you'd like to have them, I can send them to you. Just let me know. Those of you who were here, could you help us all out, the people who weren't here, by reviewing some of the things that she said are typical in the experience of separated immigrant families? Don't be shy, just. There were a lot of things that came up.
Usually the fathers, right?
Yes.
She was talking.
Right.
And then that leaves the family without, obviously, the breadwinner, and their home, their fathers.
Right. Yeah, so Vicki was pointing out that those affected are mainly women. That's true, not exclusively, of course, and sometimes women are picked up first. But it is predominantly the women who are most affected, and they may be, of course, next in line, and there are children, of course, and there are women who are pregnant, expecting, and that's a big part of it. That's where the separation of families is occurring now.
Another common thread, I think, was that there wasn't reliable accountability by our government for where people were or why they were being taken or when things would be resolved. It was shrouded in a lot of mystery and irresponsibility responsibility, it sounded to me.
Right. So tracing a loved one who has been taken by ICE can be excruciatingly difficult. There are websites one can go to, but I haven't heard that they're all that effective. And as we have been hearing, if you follow these things, often people who are detained here are sent rather quickly somewhere else. And finding them in this growing network of detention centers can be extraordinarily difficult. Yes?
What really struck me was how complicated and expensive, no matter the situation, even when it's actually an American citizen who's taken, to unravel that whole tangle is expensive and incredibly complicated.
Yes, indeed. So she had a breakdown of the amounts of money involved from hiring an immigration lawyer for a first-time consultation, $100, say, at a minimum, but then going on to add other amounts for an asylum application, a bond, so that one can be released to rejoin one's family, and then an asylum application. It looked, do any of you recall the figures, or did you calculate in your head how much this looked like, Valerio?
The range was from $6,000 to $15,000 for lawyer representation and paperwork.
Right. From 6 to 15, yeah. I was thinking more like 20, but in that range. So this costs mega money for anyone. So how is that money raised? Well, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll say something about that in a moment. Go ahead, Ann.
By the fact that they're losing half their income if one of the members is taken away. So
Right.
they don't have any, they're low on funds.
Yeah.
Either way.
Right. Yes, housing, yeah, indeed. If the breadwinner, whoever that is, male or female, has been removed, then immediately housing becomes an issue, and most are not suburban residents. They're rental folk who pay from month to month. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I-RISE does, or can, which is Bella Gersman's project, to some extent is able to arrange emergency housing. She has learned how to tap into grants of various kinds. And I don't know how much is available to her, but somehow she scrapes up enough to help people out in emergencies. There are sister congregations in our presbytery that actually have set aside fairly substantial amounts of money for this purpose. She mentioned the Metuchen PCUSA church, which, I forget the figures, $4,000 a month, yeah, right. Whether that was ongoing for any particular family, I couldn't tell, or whether it was just a one-time grant, gift, I don't know. Yes?
Free to go out, but I don't think, for some reason, I haven't fully translated it into what she mentioned about kids can't go to school.
Yeah.
And people can't go grocery shopping, and people are starving to death.
Yeah. Do we have the mic? Could we give her the hand mic to repeat her question? And do I need to turn mine off?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, that's a good, helpful comment. But I'd like everybody to hear it.
I was just saying that it was obvious that people would be afraid to go out, especially what everyone is seeing on television, and everyone is super aware of the presence of ICE and everything else. So it made sense to me that people would be scared to leave their homes, but it didn't register for me that that would equal children not being able to attend school, and that people wouldn't be able to go grocery shopping. And when she explained that people were basically huddled in their homes starving to death, it really hit me.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, everybody picked up on that, right? It's not just material, financial stress. It's spiritual, emotional, psychological turmoil, isolation, not being able, for example, to come to our food pantry, being too afraid, perhaps, of coming out. We don't know, in fact, that that is the case for the clientele here, but if you're in Minneapolis or some other place where these kinds of operations are happening, then going out of the house at all, and you mentioned school, going to school, taking the kids to school, and so, as we've been hearing, kids stay home. Their parents are too afraid for them to be out of the home. Understandably, I would say.
It's sad that a child is used as a bargaining chip in this process. They want to deport a father, so they pick the child up just as school lets out, and then fronts the father with, come and surrender to us, or we'll just hold your child.
Yep. Well, there's the famous case of the little boy, the 5-year-old Liam in Minneapolis. But there are many, many more children. Sorry.
A father dropped his child off at school and was,
Yes, you're right.
a couple weeks ago in Princeton.
Yeah. Allison is right. It's the community park school off of Witherspoon Street, where all of our grandchildren at one time were enrolled. Yeah, and a father, having dropped off his child at school, was picked up a few blocks away. There were 2 apprehensions in Princeton on that day. And the question of where have they been taken was unresolved for several days, at least. And I don't know how that's turned out, how they've located the person, but they have, yeah. Yes, Mary Beth?
I said earlier, but the long-term murkiness of even if they have the financial means, and
I'm not loud enough. Even if they have the financial means to pay these ridiculous fees, that doesn't guarantee they just get right back into the system.
Right.
And so, like you had said, the psychological turmoil is very, just breaks my heart.
Yeah. The uncertainties.
I was going to say that the other thing that came across was just what this was doing to the communities who were seeing these things happen. You know, I think communities were affected, as well as the people who were detained and the families who were broken up. You know, their streets were unsafe, and everything is in disruption.
So the brave people of Minneapolis are showing us, they're exemplifying something about how to hold up under circumstances like these. God help us, may it not happen here. But to talk about these things, I think, is really important because they might. Any other ideas to add about Bella and her presentation last week?
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
Over here.
Yes. Anna Faye.
Yeah, it's just, trying to get a grasp around the whole situation and seeing that it's from the top down, the cause to purposefully make this a convoluted system where we are today. We see, people or our Justice Department, maybe not the Justice Department, but, court orders being purposefully ignored, willfully ignored, cases of, students who are deported with, where a judge, said, they were not supposed to be deported, but they're said, well, we've already done we've already deported this person, so we're not going to go back and undo what we did. Yeah. And, our responsibility towards our civic responsibility to see our government be accountable for what they're doing, to these individuals. And I don't know, it's just a lot to take in, that this is purposeful, this confusion and causing harm to others, and I don't know, it's just a lot to try to comprehend.
Yeah, well, we have heard recently how in Minnesota a federal judge has complained about almost 100 court orders that have been ignored. The whole system is convoluted. Yes, please.
Hi. I wasn't here last week, but my question, isn't that someone tipping ICE to come in and pick up the parents? How are they going to know that this is the parent and this is their road and this is every day? So that was my question. I wasn't here yesterday. I wasn't sure last week. I wasn't sure if someone talked about it. Because usually in these situations, there's a tip coming in.
Right. Bella had an anecdote to share, which was deeply troubling, and maybe you're going to refer to it.
I was just going to say that.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that really stuck with me last time. She was explaining how there was a woman who was a housekeeper, I believe, house cleaner, something like that, and she was, sorry, I don't know if this is on. She was basically tipped off by a religious organization, I believe it was a church, that was delivering food to her. And when they delivered food to her, she had trusted them and obviously was afraid to leave her home and receive this delivery. And when they saw her child, they reported her. And she basically had to move swiftly because they were going to deport her and she had a child. And so what Bella had said was that fortunately she had an ally in the woman she was working for who had some influence and some financial means and was able to help her, but it was terrifying because she had thought that this was a safe space to be able to go to the church, and when the church brought the food, they tipped ICE.
Yes, Jeffrey.
So I'm from Minnesota. My brother lives there. My niece lives there. My niece is a lawyer. And they're doing a wonderful thing. They're trying to, out of her law firm, each one of the lawyers is pro bonoing 3 cases and supporting those people. But also, all of my classmates are there. And they report that even if they have absolutely no connection with someone who is without papers, or they know no one who is without papers, or no one without papers works for them in their many factories, all of them are living in a state of siege where they're afraid to go to the mall because they don't want to be there when this happens. They don't want to be trapped. They don't want to be kettled. Of course, a lot of these people are also protesting, but that goes without that. The older ones, my generation, who can't walk and who can't get around because Minnesota's a cold, icy, slippery place, they're living in their house too because they don't want to go to their local store, because they don't want to be there when this happens. And it's happened in front of almost every single one of them, and it's never just an arrest. I mean, if you've ever seen police officers in the United States make an arrest, it's generally a hands up, put your hands behind your back, you're being detained, cuffs go on and everything else. These are always brutal. They're always brutal. Windows are smashed and people are pulled out, thrown to the ground, and wrestled with, and it's like they're weary. They are very weary of this.
Back to the question you asked. To my knowledge, in our area, or New Jersey more broadly, the large-scale ICE operations occur at warehouses where there are bonded goods, and I've heard the technical explanation of why they go there. But that's where 25, 30, 50 people can be rounded up, including men and women, both. And they are taken away, and families are separated in many instances. But the more typical kind of apprehension is on the street, at a bus stop, around a school, and these are individuals, and you know how the profiling works, and so it's more those individuals outside of their homes and not inside of their homes. Cases of that kind, where homes are now no longer protected by the Fourth Amendment, if there is a standing order for deportation, this is how it's rationalized by ICE. People with such an order for deportation, even in their homes, can be apprehended by force if necessary. So you may have learned about the types of warrants that are used. It had been the case that there were just 2 kinds: a judicial warrant signed by a United States District Court judge. If it were our area, it would be a judge residing in Trenton, maybe a magistrate judge, but it would say at the top, United States District Court, and signed by the judge, and that would authorize entry, and nothing can stop ICE with that kind of warrant from taking the person named on the warrant. You have to open up and allow the person in. But there's another kind of warrant which ICE uses to authorize itself. And as we know, that's really not how things work. There needs to be a judge from another branch than the executive branch who signs off. So that ICE warrant, an administrative warrant, does not authorize them to actually enter a house if they're told that it's private. But now it's complicated by a new kind of warrant, and the new kind of warrant is one that specifically authorizes entry into a home if there is a final order of deportation. Final, I have learned, never means final. And final only means that a decision has been made that a person will be deported, but not a date for deportation. So these are things now being argued about in courts at various levels, and of course, as you know, if you follow these things, in Congress right now. You know that anecdote, I was remembering it slightly different. I wonder if there are different anecdotes. You heard one and I heard another, but the one I heard contained this terribly distressing detail that once the woman had been identified as being without papers, without documentation, ICE was tipped off by persons who left this woman with a box of diapers and told her that they were going to inform on her to ICE. Was that the same anecdote or a different one? And the cruelty is just unbelievable.
I was just going to say that the thing that I was saying this to Allison last week that was my overarching feeling about the whole presentation was I was just so miserable I could hardly speak. I had a lump in my throat. I went home from church and I told my husband, I feel sick. I just had to go cry. Because, you know, anybody with any kind of compassion can't listen to that stuff and not feel it. And, you know, I was convicted that mercy had to rise up and it has to be us. Mm-hmm. That's our thing. We have to rise up and show mercy and love. And I'm just hoping somebody figures some plan out that I can join into.
What a great transition.
Yes, I'm so grateful to Bella. She was the first person, to my knowledge, who's mentioned immigration and customs enforcement, ICE, and now it's a kind of log jam that's broken up. And we can talk about it publicly as people of faith. So what is now being done, I wonder if you follow the Presbyterian of the Coastlands newsletter. Our church, APC, belongs to the Presbyterian of the Coastlands. And there's a weekly newsletter that comes out. I haven't always followed it as assiduously as I do now, but now I really do. And so many helpful resources are brought to our attention as members of the same denomination through the Presbyterian of the Coastlands newsletter. You can go there and learn that there are a number of GoFundMe appeals on behalf of a variety of individuals who have been apprehended by ICE and are being kept in detention for being readied for deportation. And if you could put image number 1 up. This is just one example. A young Nigerian, Emmanuel, on whose behalf some GoFundMe funds have already been raised. If you're interested in support of this kind and you'd like to know how to find this information, email me, and I'll send you the link. Here's image 2. Could you put that up, please? This is a really detailed, photographically documented case of a woman from Honduras who came with her husband and their son some years ago for his medical care in the United States, which could not be had in Honduras. And they live in New Brunswick in a house divided into small apartments, and they have one room and shared bathroom facilities. The husband went out to pick up medications at the pharmacy and never returned. He was taken by ICE, and this mother, wife, cares for this child who has many, many very, very serious medical problems. And if you want to read up on what it's like for separated families, this is an excellent article written by a seminary graduate, someone I knew, Crystal Knapp. So things are being done at the Presbyterian level that are extraordinarily impactful, I think. The sums raised are somewhat minuscule compared to the need for legal expenses, but things like that are being done. Now, naturally, Bella Gerstmann of Cannes would love to have our dollars. Many urgent needs could be satisfied. She had an ask of us, which was a bit different, though, than financial gifts. So let's go to the next image. And I think this was the most concrete ask of all. It kind of incorporated everything else in her presentation. Adopting a family. Of course, it has no legal meaning whatsoever. We're not talking about legal adoption. We're talking about care of a family, a separated immigrant family. So communicate directly with the families, potentially by using Google Translate. Families share their needs, requests as they come up directly with the church or the group, within the church. Church members collaborate amongst themselves to delegate tasks. Her organization can provide training and so forth. I'm not sure if Google Translate is the preferred means of communication across the language barrier. I've been doing privately a kind of census here at APC of those who are Spanish speakers, and it's not a negligible number. I'm myself wondering whether or not the adoption model is one that APC could think about, and think about just in terms of possibilities. I can immediately imagine a number of problems and reasons not to, but as a thought experiment, I'd like to spend the rest of our time, which there is too little of, but we have more than 10 minutes. Brainstorming. Yeah. So, could we do that? Now, last night or the night before when I was coming up with this backup plan, I thought we could have 3 groups and Ellison, Beth, and Lindsay would facilitate. They're good brainstormers. But I think we'll do it as a whole group. And so let's imagine, just imagine what it might look like logistically to adopt a family the way Can envisions. What are the pros, the cons, the practicalities, the impracticalities of APC involvement, whether it's of individuals or as a mission project of the church? What else would we need to know?
For one thing, it should be Trenton area, I think.
Okay.
I don't know how we get to somebody
Right.
that says these are the folks in Trenton that need help, we want to help them.
Yeah. Right. So what? Okay, already you're brainstorming. Yep.
How do we choose?
Yeah.
Because that's just a basic, if you're going to bring those in. It needs to be somewhere we can reach it.
We also could be hyper-local. Freehold has a lot of folks who work in the farm industry,
Yeah.
who work in the horse industry, who are probably at risk.
Yeah, and our Freehold you named, and actually that is where a number of ICE operations recently took. Yeah. So I've got this if anyone wants it. But just go ahead. I mean, I don't need to moderate this. Mary?
I mean, I myself know that I want to volunteer, but I don't know how deep I can help.
Yeah.
How deeply, what are my skills that are needed?
Right.
And who's the leader that can administer and organize what needs to be done, or that's going to be a living thing that happens as we go. So I'm thinking about skills and how to get together.
Yeah.
As a family that's going to adopt another family.
We need to identify, I know some of the language folks here, but we need to identify those who can really help with the language.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we're going to need.
Right.
I was just going to say it would be nice to see a ministry evolve where people could actually get together on a regular basis and continue to talk about the needs and come up with a plan. I mean, adopting a family I think would be amazing, but one of the things that was mentioned about the food pantry, maybe starting to deliver to homes and recognizing which homes needed that. And maybe there's a ministry component where, we bring Bibles to people, or we bring Sunday school materials or whatever, or maybe there are other facets to it, like somebody who is bilingual goes and helps them make these phone calls to legal aid where they can't necessarily navigate applications or forms or phone conversations. So it'd be nice to see a ministry actually develop.
Yeah.
I think two things come to mind. One is I like the idea of it being a mission effort of the church, so that we're engaging our entire faith community. But I would probably want to start with bringing Bella back and talking specifically about the how-tos of adopting a family, so that we really understand what the responsibilities are. And I think the second thing that I would want to do is to reach out to my colleagues at the Presbytery and find out if anybody else has had the experience of adopting a family that they could share with us.
Right. Anna Faye had her hand up there. Oh, yes, please.
Oh, hi. So my sister actually works in Freehold Borough, which, as many people know, has a very high ESL population of kids. And she shared with me some of her experiences at school as an administrator and the things that they're now dealing with. And there are ICE agents that come in, and they're not allowed into the building with the students, but they are allowed into the main office. And they do go into the main office to question about kids and to try and wait for them to come out of school. So it's not something that's happening far away. It's happening right here. She drives through on her way to work, and it used to be a very busy town with people out, you know, looking for work and jobs. The streets are empty. Kids don't show up to school because they're afraid that they're going to be taken, and their families aren't working.
Yeah, some of the things that I've recently seen are people giving rides to individuals to schools, you know, if they're afraid to walk. A woman I saw has stopped going to her maternity visits because she's afraid to go to the doctor. So possibly working with a group of doctors who can go to women, you know, versus instead of the women going to their facilities where, and you know, aside from bringing food and things like this. So really just being chauffeurs for people who are afraid to go out by themselves.
I think that's the most basic logistical support that can be offered. So just quickly, some of the things that transportation could be offered for include going to the pharmacy to pick up medicine, a doctor's appointment, maybe accompanying a parent delivering a child to school or picking that child up. There are so many things, but basically it's logistically about transportation. That's where we start. That's the most minimalistic kind of support.
When I was mentioning that, I hope someone would organize something. I wasn't thinking so much of these kinds of things, which I think are actually, we could take up straight away fairly easily. I'm talking about taking this whole problem out of the shadows in the dark and bringing it into the light and going toward, you know, advocating and trying to change the overall climate of, it's also nasty and miserable. And I would like us to be able to be vocal advocates who really, I want to partner up with our Minnesotan citizens because I'm so proud of them for what they're doing. And I hate the idea that they're sort of on their own. Could we be their partners here in New Jersey? That's my big stupid thought.
You can follow what's happening among Presbyterians in Minneapolis. The Westminster Presbyterian Church session has made a fine statement about the situation there. The Presbyterian Outlook, our denominational magazine, is a good way to do that. Jeffrey.
I just want to interject here before we run out of time. I think many of us want to connect on this topic. And so let's make sure that we have everybody's email who would be interested in staying in touch. So I know Richard has been sending out an email message about this series of classes. So if you get that, that means you're on that list. If you don't get that and want to be involved, let us know at the end so we can make sure we have your contact information.
So immediately after last week's presentation, I began brainstorming about this and brought together a small group of people, and we were talking about where we go and how we move. And we have at this church already a food pantry that serves the community. It's supported by the Allentown Presbyterian Church. It's hosted by the Allentown Presbyterian Church, but it's not the Allentown Presbyterian Church. It reaches into the larger community around here. And there are lots of people who are not members of the Allentown Presbyterian Church who support the pantry both financially and with service projects. And so we don't have to think about this as something that we're taking all the liability on ourselves for. The other thing is that using the pantry as a spring-off point, we would be able to identify people who are in need and people who we could go and approach to see if this is something that they wanted to do. One of the things that we started off brainstorming about was the medical needs, which was just mentioned, because that's so terribly obvious that when somebody's at home, they're not getting medical care either for themselves or their children or anything else at this, just with wellness villages. And we didn't go any more further than having a broad conversation on that, of which we got no consensus. But we have a place to start, and we have a lot of people beyond this, but we should start here and then open it up to all our friends in Upper Freehold.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey.
The only thought that comes to my mind is that this is not going to get any better. And I think if we look back at history in this country and the role of the Underground Railroad, I think there's probably tactics there that we can emulate and maybe look to not just feed the people that need care, but actually figure out plans on how to find a way to transport them out of this country to a more friendly country such as Canada. That's the only, I think it's going to get more serious, and I'm just reflecting a little bit on some of the history of my folks in Ukraine, where people actually, were ratting each other out just because of the fear factor, and that's starting to happen here, I believe. So I think we have to come up with Plan B.
Yeah, thank you, Len. We are going to have to close in just a moment. It has come up, Allison has reiterated something that Mary first brought up about organization. One would, of course, learn as one goes, but we want to start right, and that means consulting with other churches in the Presbytery that are doing this already, and Bella herself is acquainted with churches and has trained people in them for this kind of work. We need to have Bella back. I think we're agreed on that. I would imagine you need at least a dozen of us who are willing to say on this day or that, I would be available from these hours to these hours to help out within a certain radius. I heard JC the other day say that within a 5-mile radius, there are 60,000 people. Within a 10-mile radius, there are more than 1 million. So we have to figure a lot of those things out. But if you do have an interest, I would love to hear from you. I don't have the organizational smarts to handle this. And I'm a bookworm. And so it's got to be a team sort of project. I want to thank you for being here. I'm so grateful. And I am so glad the log jam has broken up and we can now begin as people of faith to talk about these things more openly here at church. Yeah. Worship, for those of you who haven't worshiped yet, begins at 11.
The people of Minnesota, they're doing such a great job because they've been organizing for years. They're such a progressive. I have a cousin who's a lawyer in Minnesota too. So